Page 87, the bottom. These discussions with Gail and Trish often have the effect of sending me back in time. When I was a young teacher, I felt as they did then that I could not teach without the final threat. The timeout chair, my punishment of choice, seemed impossible to eliminate until the inarticulate sadness of the chair's occupants finally began to penetrate my consciousness. Looking through old school diaries, I find many notations about these dispiriting events. Charles always sits sideways in the timeout chair, is one comment. He burrows his chin into his fist and blinks back tears. On the other page, I squirm as I describe his mood. He looks so disappointed. Yes, disappointed is the word, in himself or in me. Moments earlier, he was Luke Skywalker. Surely, there was more logic to Luke than to the chair, but I wrote nothing about that. His impulsive chasing at least offered the advantage of plot and character. My chair was an admission of defeat. What if the principal had ordered me out of the blocks to think about its pitfalls until the children played more constructively? I'm sorry you have to sit here again, Charles. I apologized dozens of times, but you must remember not to push people, will you? Charles didn't remember. Being locked up seldom helped a child not do something, though it did notify everyone that the child was bad. I had proof of this the day the chair was missing. Where's the blue chair? Ellen asked. Mr. Jackson is fixing it. Then nobody'll be bad today, she reasoned. If there's no timeout chair, nobody will be bad, I repeated, wanting to make sure I understood. Of course not. How could there be? Yet I continued to use the chair, and even when Fritz, that graduate student who did research in my room, showed me on his charts that Charles was not worst behaved, I still found reason to put him in the chair. It would be 5 more years before I decided it might be possible to teach without some form of punishment. Then 1 year in a class I considered exceptionally difficult, I gave up the chair, abruptly, unequivocally. We're not using the timeout chair anymore, I announced. The children were startled. They stared at the blue chair, unbelieving. Why not? William asked. Because it doesn't do any good. I've been watching carefully. No one behaves any better after being in the chair. I do, William insisted. But the next day you're in the chair again, I pointed out. Then I get good again, he explained. Was the most often jailed child afraid of losing his jailer? No, I've made up my mind. You'll all have to learn to act properly without the timeout chair. In fact, without any punishment at all. I'm tired of punishing people. It makes children sad, and it makes me sad, too. How will William be good? Jilly wondered. Well, we'll just talk about things, I said. And by the way, William's not the only one who sits in the chair. But everyone knew he sat there the most. Well, the chair labeled him in my eyes, in the children's, and worst of all in his own. I felt a sudden wave of relief. The chair had become a useless and possibly damaging ritual. I never resumed the practice, but it took a while to fill the void. Shunning the role of punisher did not automatically confer upon me the mantle of dialectician. My desire for useful discourse often turned to recrimination. You can't go pushing and stopping like that, William. Look, you made Marnie cry and you knocked over all her dishes. I'm an angry wolf, he growled. Then be somebody else, I snapped. You're spoiling everyone's play. This was hardly a useful exchange, yet without the timeout chair, play could continue. And I could better observe the way children think. When punishment was not an issue, energies pulsated along more creative paths. William's playmates were willing to examine the logic of his behavior and extend the fantasy. There's no chimney in this house, William, Marnie advised, so a wolf can't come in. Hey, pretend I'm angry because I found out you don't have a chimney, and then you forget and you really do. But the good witch. No, she's a bad witch, but no, she's really a good wolf. She's your wolf mother. William, no mother wolf. An angry wolf don't got a mother. Grrr. Teacher, William's doing again. He's being bad. Perhaps so, but I no longer had to decide if William's behavior was punishable. Instead, I was listening to the plot. I was more curious about his reasoning and less worried about his behavior. Now, after telling him to stop bothering Marnie, I was able to ask, why can't an angry wolf have a mother? Mothers aren't in the forest, they're in the den, he answered soberly. When you're in the den, you're not angry? Only in the forest is where I'm angry, and not in houses, Marnie adds. I'm a different mother in a house. Could a different mother in a house give food to an angry wolf? I asked. If he doesn't growl, she replied. There were questions of appropriateness and logic, and before we were done, new plans were evolving. The classroom was becoming, for me, a far more interesting world as I discovered that the child's path to reasonable behavior often was best approached in the form of make believe. Dramatic necessity and friendship offered better reasons to behave agreeably than some obscure adult purpose in the shape of a chair. The choice was mine. I could view misbehavior as bad and therefore punishable, or consider these unwanted acts to be the misreading of a script in progress, awkward stage business that needed reworking. We don't fire the actors just because the early rehearsals are unwieldy. We analyze the script to bring out its inherent logic and it to improve the acting. This notion of viewing misbehavior as poor stage acting appealed to me. Why not create my own stories in which to suggest alterations in behavior? Certainly, William needed another perspective in the doll corner. William, could you pretend to be a wolf that doesn't knock things over? Once upon a time, there was an angry wolf, and his wolf mother was far away in the den. But a different mother let him in, and he didn't growl. Angry wolves always growl, you know. I know, but since this mother doesn't like it, where else can you do it? Another time, I came across William knocking Marnie's doll and commented, this reminds me of that book I read yesterday. Corduroy, remember? You're as kind to the baby as Lisa in the book is to the toy bear. Such experiments in storytelling seemed promising. I was searching for new ways to think about behavior and its discontents. Having given up the timeout chair, I needed to replace it with a consistent and positive teaching strategy. It was not enough to view misbehavior as an error in judgment. The question was, how could these errors be used as legitimate learning experiences? I wanted to exchange negative images for positive active roles whenever possible. William, you really upset Tim. Look at him crying. But he'll not feel better if I'm mean to you, so I'm going to be nice to you both. Then perhaps you'll be nice to Tim also. It had become clear to me that I could no longer place disruptive behavior outside and in opposition to the main business of the classroom. All accompanying behavior was, in fact, part of the lesson. More accurately, the lesson was part of the continuing life in the classroom. As life as real as the one at home, with problems of equal human dimension deserving the best of our combined concentration. The chair, in its negativism and passivity, was a non sequitur. Something else was becoming clear to me, and it had much to do with the golden rule I had been told about in childhood, but had not often thought of it in my own classroom as a teacher. I must not do to a child that which I could not have done to me. As my teaching errors have not been punishable by isolation, humiliation, and denial of activity, I would not impose these sentences upon the children. Furthermore, just as I expect to be given the benefit of all doubt, so will I attempt to favor the children. For what if I'm wrong and my perceptions are faulty? Was I not mistaken in my assessment of Charles? The implication of Fritz's research in my room did not become immediately clear to me, yet there have been few more convincing demonstrations of my fallibility, and I cannot allow myself to forget